Hey, it's Ollie. It has once again been a very long day for me. I've had such a busy weekend with my business, but I wanted to get this video out for you. So today we are finishing the grinding of the piece, that one piece that I broke. We are getting the glass foiled and we are getting the soldering pretty much complete. The project is not complete. There's still a few finishing touches that we're going to have to do in the next video. But today was a very exciting day in my personal and business life. So I have some friends that are immediately coming over to celebrate with me. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so picking up where we left off, I had the opportunity to bake the enamel onto the glass. So that worked out. As you can see, I can scratch at it and nothing's really going bad. So we do have one piece of glass that we did not get, and that's the bottom piece of the tail, really the base of the figure that we use to stand up those poly figures in the set. So this is just me grinding that last piece down so that they fit well together so that we can get this all foiled up. So what I'm doing here is I'm now just removing the nails and I'm going to clean up this glass. So I'm just using some rubbing alcohol, and this is to get the oil off. I just don't want any excess oil from my hands or elsewhere on this glass. I want the glass to be free of any debris, because this piece here that I'm now doing is adding copper foil. So what the copper foil does is we basically put it along the edge of the glass, and that's what the solder is going to stick to. So we have to make sure that for that to adhere properly to the glass, that there's no excess oil, otherwise it can separate and then the piece can fall apart, which we obviously don't want to happen. So I did notice a design flaw going through this that I'll speak to a little bit later because I have to fix it, but at this point basically I'm just going through and putting foil on. The other thing about the foil I'll just point out is that if you look carefully at where I'm placing the foil, I'm not putting it on the outer edge, and that's because I'm going to use something else at the end to finish the project with the border, so you'll see that a little bit later, but I'm just putting the foil where the pieces of glass meet currently, and again, doing that very specifically on purpose here. So we're just wrapping up getting that copper foil on, but the copper foil still is not properly adhered to the glass. So in order to do that, we're going to use something called a burnishing tool, which is basically just a plastic stick. And you'll see that I'm doing this here up at the top there. It's kind of like the equivalent of smoothing out a piece of foil with a spoon. So I'm really just working on getting that pressed into the glass, and you want to get it as adhered to the surface as possible. So you're basically just rubbing that in with a lot of pressure. Again, imagine a Hershey Kiss wrapper and a metal spoon, and you're just trying to smooth it out. So on smooth glass it looks very, very smooth, and on glass that has a texture it will look bumpy after the fact. So you can see there are some bumps on the pieces, but this process takes quite a while to do. And at this point, we are just nailing these back into place. So the reason I'm piecing this back together is if I just try to solder it the way that it is, the likelihood is that it will fall apart and then you've kind of got these two pieces adhered at an awkward angle, and it just makes it really difficult. So the idea is you nail it all back in place, and you just kind of do a very initial pass of the solder just to kind of glue all the pieces together with that hot metal. And then once you've got them tacked together, then you can pull the nails out again, and then you don't risk your piece shifting while you're doing this. So once it's all back in place, then we're going to get into the solder. So what you just saw there was the actual solder. It comes on a roll. And I'm using a soldering iron that will make an appearance in a moment here. Okay, so what you're about to see here is a bottle of something called flux. It is a liquid that you place on the copper foil, and it helps to make the solder move smoothly along the copper foil. That white chalky block that you're looking at is something called sal ammoniac, and that is to make sure that the tip of my soldering iron stays in good condition as we work. And here I am just basically using my soldering iron to put some beads down, and that is hot molten metal, and I'm just again tacking those pieces together. Now that they are tacked together, I can pull out all of those nails and put them to the side. So once it's like that, you can just kind of do a quick pass, but I like to put down my proper soldering mat at this point for that, now that I've got the nails out of the way, just for some extra protection here. And I'm just putting a little bit of extra solder on here, but I noticed as I was doing this that the tail was flexing. And this is, again, when you're new at stained glass, you don't necessarily see the problems until you're in them. That tail is very weak because it's very easy for it to just snap at those points. It doesn't have anything else securing it. Now I am going to put a border around this, which you'll see in a little bit, but it's very weak there. I didn't like the way it was flexing. So I realized quite quickly that I was going to need to find a way to support it. So I've just flipped it over. I'm just working on the back side and getting some solder on there. And this is both a very relaxing and frustrating process. It takes a while to get good at soldering and getting a really nice, consistent bead. But I feel like I'm starting to get better at it. It's just very time consuming, as you can see. Alright, so at this point I have decided to try to problem solve, and I'm getting out some copper wire that is tinned, meaning that it's coated with lead so that I can actually solder it. So you'll see that it has that silver color to it. It is copper wire though. And I'm adhering this to the back just to give more support to the tail. So it's not on the front, but just soldering this wire against those joints just to give it a bit more strength, because I don't want to risk the tail snapping at any point, especially if the piece were to fall. It's just good to have an extra bit of support there. So I've let that solder, of course this is sped up significantly, but I've left that solder on just long enough so that when I went to bend that top piece into place, that the other parts, the metal had cooled enough it wasn't going to shift or move on me in any way. So this process really at this rate just involves flipping the piece back and forth, and just depends on how much of a perfectionist you want to be trying to get these solder lines perfect. Again, the more you practice this, the better you'll get at it, but I have a perfectionist tendency, which is a bit frustrating in these scenarios, but just going over and over and over and over on those lines to get it all just right. Now, at this point, I was feeling good about the piece, so I am now getting something out called lead came. Lead came is basically sometimes referred to as a U channel. It's a very lightly grooved U-shaped metal edge that you can put around. It's very soft, very flexible. As you can see, I'm just bending it very easily with my hand here. And it fits around the edge of the piece. And this work is sometimes just painful to work through, but I'm fitting it to the piece and you have to get it just right. It can be a bit frustrating to get this channel on there, but it really gives it, as you can see, a polished look. So once you get the piece cut to size, then you put flux at the joints, so where those solder lines were already, and then I'm just kneading it up and melting it very gently. That edge is so soft that it really can't take a lot of heat, and you can just burn a hole right through that edge, so you can't really touch that with the soldering iron directly for more than half a second if you even are going to. But you want to do that on both sides just so that it's well connected, and that's what's going to hold that on. But you can see that that really just adds a much more professional polish to the piece by having that nice clean edge. So at this point then I had to figure out, okay, now I have to do the tail, and I decided to do the tail and the arms separately. Previously I've tried to just work a piece all the way around. It's not going to work very well because anywhere you have those tight little joints, it can't fit into those, so it is best to kind of break it into a few pieces. But I'm just soldering this onto the back, and again, same process, just meeting it up with the solder where those existing solder lines are, just to weld it in place. And then I'm just trying to smooth out so that it doesn't look too lumpy. The back doesn't look, perfect because I've got that wire in there, but that wire was definitely needed for support. And again, no one's really going to see the back, so I don't care about that side too much. So definitely one of the issues with stained glass work is that you can just spend hours and hours and hours trying to get everything just perfect here. And I kind of realized that there's no use in doing that until the end if you're really going to be doing a lot of like the lead came and that kind of stuff. But we've got this all now together and it's looking fantastic. I'm super excited about it, and just putting these last touches on that solder is really all I'm doing here. But look how good that edge looks. Like it looks so, again, like just much more professional and clean when you get that lead came on there as the edge. So that's why I've been doing that on my projects. I just think it looks really sharp. And now that we've got that there, here's where we're leaving off. So the piece still needs to be washed up. We're gonna fix it up a little bit more and get it stained, but there it is. Okay, so now that you know what that process is like, I would love to hear your thoughts on how you feel about it. It's pretty dangerous. I have to have the window open when I'm soldering, which is quite cold. Thankfully, here in Vancouver, it's not like constantly cold the way the rest of Canada is in the winter. It's pretty mild here. It's not freezing or anything. But it's still cold. It's still January, and that part's kind of hard. But the flux, the liquid that I put on there, that is really the thing that's poisonous that you have to be careful with. And then aside from that, again, the soldering iron's just super, super hot. You're dealing with molten metal. You're also dealing with lead, so there's all sorts of fun stuff going on there that can hurt you. But all in all, the process is actually very calming. So I hope you enjoyed watching that. So our next steps with it, we're going to get it cleaned up. We're going to get the we're going to polish it, put patina on it, which is going to change the color of the solder. We'll put a hook on it so that we can hang it, and then we'll hang it up. So I am looking forward to that. As always, would love to hear your comments, what you think about the whole project. I am still very, very new to stained glass, so I'm not super good at it, but I think that was pretty good for one of my first efforts. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, please hit the subscribe button. It helps out the channel so much. I come out with new videos every Monday and Thursday. Anything related to Vintage Polly Pocket, I am all over it. And it also helps to like the video and leave a comment. All of that stuff helps out with the algorithm that we're constantly battling against. And if you're on social media, please come follow along on social media too. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Just look up Pocket Vintage Toys. That's the best place to connect with me outside of YouTube. Other than that, that's it for me for today. So as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.